So, hello everyone. Before we start today, we want to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we can take a moment to acknowledge the importance of these lands, which we each all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So my name is Autumn Sipis. I am the project manager for the Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare. And on behalf of the coalition, I would like to welcome you to today's event. Um, oops. Energy benchmarking to performance analytics, integrating Energy Star Portfolio Manager with RETScreen Expert. This webinar is being delivered as part of the coalition's Preparing Canada's Healthcare Buildings for Net Zero project, made possible with an investment for the Government of Canada's Low Carbon Economy Implementation Readiness Fund. Throughout the event, please use the chat function for any technical issues you may be experiencing. Use the Q&A function for any questions you have regarding the presentation, and our panelists will be answering questions at the end of the event today. We will also be recording this presentation, and the recording will be sent to all registrants and available on our website and YouTube channel at a later time. Presenting today, we have Stephen Dixon. Stephen is the principal of TDS Dixon Inc. and has over 44 years provided energy management services to a diverse range of industrial, commercial, institutional, and utility organizations. He's broadly recognized as a leader in energy management training. His focus is simple: to empower all that he works with to use energy more effectively by developing individual skills, organizational best practices, and providing tools for energy management. We also have a special guest joining us today, Nick Thibodeau. Nick is a mechanical engineer and certified project management professional with over 5 years of experience. Since December 2023, has served as energy manager with Service New Brunswick, overseeing operations for Vitaly and tourism. So I will now hand things off to Stephen to get us started today.
Great, thanks, Autumn. Let's go ahead and share my screen. And there we go. So you can just confirm you're seeing the right screen there, folks. Give me a second here. Okay, there we go. So welcome everybody. We're going to have a quick little webinar here today. Nick is going to give us show us some examples of how he uses Portfolio Manager with RETScreen, and I'm going to feature the new interface that's available from Portfolio Manager to RETScreen. And also, if you're hanging around to the end, I have a little special offer. If you are a Portfolio Manager user, you will be able to obtain a 1-year license to RETScreen, free 1-year trial license for RETScreen in order to activate the tools that we're going to show you here today. So the agenda is going to be pretty quick. As I said, I'll give a very brief overview of what benchmarking is. I know many of you probably do some benchmarking already, especially if you're Portfolio Manager users. And likewise, I'll briefly run through what you can do with Portfolio Manager, or what otherwise we call ESPM for short. And in that sense, we'll have a little demonstration of some of its features. I'm not going to actually go live today, just to keep it a little bit quicker. But then I will focus on this new interface between ESPM and RETScreen Expert. A little bit of a typo there. It will actually allow us to automatically connect RETScreen to ESPM. You do it once, it builds a portfolio, or however many buildings or meters you might have. You could just do it for 1 meter, 1 building, or an entire portfolio of buildings. And then it'll constantly keep that updated for you. I'll talk a little bit about then once you get your data into RETScreen, and your data then is backed up. Obviously, you've got data in Portfolio Manager. Now you have a reflection of that data in RETScreen. And then you can go and start to do some deeper performance analytics with RETScreen. And even beyond using ESPM data, RETScreen, and I'll just talk a couple of minutes about the other hooks that RETScreen has to other tools. So if you have meters within your healthcare facilities, say, for example, ones that are connected by another vendor, in all likelihood, you'll be able to connect those meters into RETScreen and integrate all the analytics together. So it gives you a complete suite of performance analysis tools. And as I said before, Nick will be talking about how he uses RETScreen within the healthcare sector within New Brunswick, and he actively uses this interface and has for quite a while now, actually. So What is benchmarking? Um, Benchmarking is a practice which helps us to improve our energy performance. What is energy performance? Well, energy performance, and this is important, energy performance isn't just how much energy we use or what it costs, but it's our consumption related to what's driving it. And so if you use Portfolio Manager, you know RETScreen or Portfolio Manager does do adjustments for weather. And the Energy Star score, I'll talk about this later, actually is adjusted for other factors. So those are the drivers. So if we want to improve energy performance, we need tools that make our performance visible. And both Portfolio Manager and RETScreen provides these types of tools. Um, Better performance comes from better practice. And that practice can be technical, operational, or organizational. In the first workshop that we did in this series back in the spring, we talked about, I think, 3 circles in a Venn diagram: technical, organizational, and operational. And basically, this is what we have to improve, right? So not just putting in a new piece of equipment. And I think, Nick, you'll speak to this. Some of your examples will be just adjustments that were made, right? So being able to use tools that determine when something maybe is out of adjustment, needs to be corrected, and you can improve that operational performance. Ultimately, best performance comes from best practice, right? And better practices, and we're not going to be at best practice tomorrow, but I think using tools that keep the energy numbers visible, the performance visible, will help us to get there in the long run. So benchmarking is a beginning, but it's also a journey, right? So, and using Portfolio Manager and RETScreen hand in hand together as a suite, I think we can make a good journey there. Portfolio Manager is a tool that allows us to look at many things, not just energy, but water, waste, and materials. In fact, there's even a neat tool for tracking your energy, your organizational aspects of energy efficiency and sustainability for that matter. We can compare, measure, track over time. We can set baselines and goals and targets, and those goals can both be numerical, but they can also be aspirational goals, things that we want to do. And in fact, some of the tools in Portfolio Manager allow us to track those things. We'll track the impact of the strategies, create custom reports and charts. We can share data with others. So some of you may have done this already. You know, for example, if you've got a building or a set of buildings in Portfolio Manager, you can make that available to others to look at on a read-only or even on a full edit basis. You can become Energy Star certified, which means we'll talk about the Energy Star score later, but basically if you're over 75, then you become Energy Star certified. Nick, I know a number of your healthcare facilities are Energy Star certified, and this is the tool to get there. You can put the plaque on the wall saying we're an Energy Star building. And ultimately, Nick, go ahead. You were going to add something there. Nope.
No, I just name was mentioned, so I figured I'd show my face.
Yeah, how many of your buildings are Energy Star certified? How many of your facilities?
In the group as a whole, I'd have to go digging.
Okay, that's fine. I put you on the spot. I apologize for
No,
that.
that's fine. From BTIDK side, we've just kind of started the process, and we got our first one this year, and targeting a few more there in years to come.
Cool. So this is actually a facility that's a part of the suite of facilities that you look after, Nick, or Mockville Public Hospital. And what was interesting about this one was that there was an increase that was noticed from the summary of performance metrics, 11% increase, right? And then it produced a little glitch on a graph. And even before they were using RETScreen, they were able to then go down and dig down and identify that there was a heat recovery ventilator not operating. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. This isn't about putting in new equipment. This is about making sure the equipment that we already have is working as it should. And if those blips create, you know, signals that we can respond to, then that is truly performance monitoring and responding. So Portfolio Manager is a rating system for buildings. It gives us the ability to calculate an energy use intensity. Gigajoules per square meter is a common one. In the US, they use thousands of BTUs per square foot. I actually commonly use kilowatt hours per square foot. These are all basically equivalences. They just have to, you convert back and forth. But in Portfolio Manager, the native one is gigajoules per square meter. The Energy Star score is a normalized building score, which takes into account more than just floor area and weather, but other conditions in the building, number of computers, number of people, that type of thing. So it's a much more objective comparison, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Within Energy Star Portfolio Manager, you also have the ability to compare your building to a median, right? So even if you can't normalize to an Energy Star score, you can look at the median within a group. But for healthcare facilities, they do have a score So it's pretty handy. But the median score or the median energy intensity is also available as a comparator. So just going through some of the features of RETScreen, Energy Star Portfolio Manager. When you open it up, basically it shows you your portfolios that are available to you. You can add new new properties to that. You can basically configure the interface to show the things that you want. Right now, it's really not showing anything. But once we get into this, we'll start to populate that interface. The main tabs that are available to you are your portfolio, how you share, how you report recognition. That's the Energy Star piece. So, basically manage your portfolio, share as appropriate with others, report, right, and creating custom reports in addition to the standard ones, and then the recognition that you may require or receive through Energy Star. Each property has a number of pieces of information data behind it. A summary screen, which is sort of where we started there. Details of the facility, floor area, energy, details, water, waste and materials, the goals for the facility, and even aspects about the design of the facility. So you can really profile your facility in quite a bit of detail. I'm assuming many of you are Energy Star portfolio manager users, but I just wanted to cover some of the deeper aspects here. So there's a question here. Do you have a comparison for owners of private healthcare facilities such as dental offices? Now that's an interesting one. I'm going to have to think about answering that one. And there may even actually be a type of building in there. I just don't have that off the top of my head. So maybe Michelle or some of the folks online can look at that, but I'll take a look at that one later for sure. Laurie, there's
Yeah,
Michelle
I'm looking
popping
at
up.
it right now. I think there is, but I'll confirm that to you in a minute.
Okay. So yeah, so basically, yeah, once you pick your facility type, then you have that Energy Star score available or the medians for that facility type too. So it really depends on what building types they've actually dealt with. So here's more of a dashboard that's got data in it. The little graph on the left-hand side shows the trend in a particular parameter you might be looking at or metric. So in this case, it's the weather normalized site energy use intensity. So that's as a gigajoules per square meter, right? So we can see it's trending down over time. On the right-hand side, so that's for the entire portfolio, which is the group of buildings shown on the right-hand side. Here we see the building type, the current date of the data in that facility, the Energy Star score, if it was available in this case, what year, and then the normalized, weather normalized site energy use intensity, which can vary anywhere, in this case, from 1.69, 1.36 up to, what about 2.37. So it's quite a range. And if we were to look at the Energy Star score, that range would likely be reflected in the Energy Star score also. So when you open up your screen, sometimes you will not see some of the values. So there's some refresh buttons that you have to hit, which are handy for making everything current. And that's something that I've seen people sometimes hiccup on is they'll look at the screen and go, that's not my data, but then they have to refresh the metrics. So you can customize the dashboard. You can change and filter the buildings that are actually included in it, right? And you can change the information that's presented, the columns that are presented. So not only which buildings, but what information for each of those buildings. So the types of information that can be displayed, and it's pretty extensive actually. So in this case, this list is referring to what do I want to put on my chart, but this could be the same list as we would be, say, putting across the top of the table itself. So we had the Energy Star score, the source and the site energy use intensity. Now this is actually displaying as a US units, kBtus per square foot. The one thing I'll mention about site and source energy, it's a common question we get. Site is what you use at the site. Source takes into account where that energy is essentially being generated. And if you use source EUI for electricity, then it gets multiplied by a significant factor, 2.5, I think, in here in Canada, which can kind of skew the results. So in most cases, I would use the site EUI, but in some cases when you're buying, say, from, if you're looking at energy coming in from a district heating system, you may have to think about the difference between site and source energies and then EUIs. So all the other numbers here are really sort of derived from those things. The weather normalized EUIs, energy use intensities, waste and water, if you have those things, or wastewater. The source energy use, there will be a site energy use in there somewhere. and many other parameters. So anything you have in there can be displayed on the graph on the left-hand side, and also can become part of the table on the right-hand side. That is the columns, and I think we can have up to 4 or 5 columns in there, depending on the situation. When you add a property, you need a certain amount of information, property information, its function, its name, address, year built, gross floor area. But then if you want to get that Energy Star score, there will be other details that you need to add in order for Portfolio Manager to do that normalization. And you're probably going to need at least 12 months of data if you want to begin to track. Now, some people will actually start by putting in a year's worth of data, like just one value for a year, and then going back and filling in the monthly data later. Unfortunately, you won't be able to do sort of monthly analytics in RETScreen and other reports if you do that. So property details, right? So we can dig down and we can, there's a lot of information that's stored, and I'm not going to go into the details of it here. If you've set it up and use it, then clearly you know how to do that. But basically, all those things we talked about before, like the details of the property itself, the energy, the water, waste and material use goals, right? And ultimately what your goals are and what your targets are for that facility. So there's a fairly rich set of information that's available. You can customize the dashboard, as I said before. So the last list I was looking at was the little graph on the left. So now we can customize that table on the right and dig down and actually add up to 5 columns. So in this case, we have simply the Energy Star score, right, for that particular property, the source EUI, the site EUI, the energy cost, and various other parameters. And that was the report, I believe, that Nick, we showed earlier for one of your hospitals where it was a little bit out of whack, and that triggered an investigation and led to a correction of HRV. So the key thing with any of this stuff, I always like to think about, numbers are great, performance indices are great, but if we can use it to drive improvement, whether it be operational improvement or technological improvement, that's key. All right,
Stephen, there
Michelle,
is
you're going to add something.
Yeah, there's a question that you may want to address about who are the key stakeholders for Energy Star Portfolio Manager in Canada. By the way, the answer for the type of buildings available was provided by somebody. So yeah, you've got medical offices. It's Aidan that provided the list there.
Okay.
But yes, if you can just address that little question about the key stakeholders.
So the stakeholders are Natural Resources Canada, right? So Natural Resources Canada, they work with Energy Star to basically establish the availability of the tool in Canada. The data is stored in a sort of a secure repository of Canadian data, and the Energy Star score itself was actually developed in conjunction with data coming from Statistics Canada survey of buildings. So it's very much Canadian data. So NRCan, though, is the lead proponent of it, or the lead stakeholder. They're the ones that made it all happen. Property level energy meters. You can have multiple meters within a property, right? So here we see electric and a gas meter, but there can be as many meters as you want, and you're not just limited to electricity or gas. There could be steam, chilled water, other types of commodities that you might be buying to service your building. Property level energy use then comes down to a set of records, and here we have monthly data, energy use, cost, and it actually has a pretty good trail in it too. So that way, if you've got multiple users, you can keep track of who's changing the numbers or adding numbers. And also important in many cases where your meters may not be read monthly, the idea of an estimate that can be tracked as an estimate, that actually becomes really useful in RETScreen, because we can actually collapse all those estimates into actual reads, and it makes the analytics a lot more realistic. And the data can be inputted from an Excel file. Unfortunately, at this point, you can't take data from RETScreen and put it back into Portfolio Manager, although a lot of people have asked for that. So that may be a future feature that's available. You've got reporting at the property level. Maybe, Nick, you've got some of the reports that you've done, so I'll leave this part to you to talk a little bit about how you use the reporting. But there's a number of standard reports that you can use. You can configure and predefine define your own report, generate the report. The Energy Star score is a great tool, obviously, because it gives you a ranking. What does it give you a ranking of? Well, it gives you a ranking from 1 to 100, and really it's a ranking as such. So if you're 100, it means you're better than everybody else out there. If you're 1, everybody's better than you. If 50, you're in the middle of the pack, means that half the building stock out there is better, half it's worse than you. Now, people often ask me the question, Steve, well, if you actually, if somebody goes in and adds a building, does my Energy Star score change? Because obviously if people are adding buildings, then it's going to change the stock that's in there. In a sense, the database changes and maybe your score will change. No. But from time to time, when the algorithm, which basically encompasses the statistics for the existing building stock, gets updated by Natural Resources Canada, then your Energy Star score could change, could go up, could go down, depending on what the building stock did. So that's something, and you'll be notified of that. But so adding a building doesn't change other people's scores, but eventually, over time, that score could change a little bit abruptly as the database in behind the statistics of the group of building actually changes. The Energy Star score is kind of interesting for a healthcare facility because it takes into account floor area and weather, right, which are the top and the bottom ones here, but also the operating hours, the workers on the main shift, the licensed bed capacity of the facility, the presence of a laundry, and then the percentage of facility that's heated and cooled. So it digs in quite deeply into, and these have been determined by the folks at NRCan in developing their model, their Energy Star score model. These are determined to be significant variables in the performance of a hospital. So ignoring these, you're really not making an objective comparison of one facility to the other. So the Energy Star score, given this number of variables, as long as you put that data in properly, is quite a robust measure of how well you're doing compared to others. And to give you an example of how it works, this one doesn't include all of the variables just for simplicity on the screen, but it might be that 2 buildings, right, had the same energy use intensity. Let's call it 225 at the bottom there, right? Now, once you generate the Energy Star score for that building, right, and you realize that given the difference in the number of workers and the number of hours in the building, the expected EUI for the building on the left, A, is 277, B is 315, right? Now, 315, right, is a lot higher than 225, more so than 277. So the building B performing at the same, on the surface, 225 is actually well above what it's supposed to be running at given the stock of buildings. So it gets a 72. It gets ranked as a 72. Whereas this building, A, right, is closer to its expected UI, so it's operating at a 62. They're still above 50%, right? But they're both different. So it allows you to distinguish between buildings beyond heating degree days, floor area, taking into account workers and hours and things like that. And in terms of what that score actually tells you, it's hard. A lot of people say, well, I'm a 70, what should I do? Well, I like to think about the score as being, if you're a 1, you probably are going to have to do some investment, but then you're going to have to do some adjustments and do some maintenance activities. Once you get to close to the 100, there may be a few things you can invest in, right? But largely you're going to be maintaining and doing those ongoing performance adjustments. So we try to show with the spectrum here, there's no one message that can be derived out of a score, but the idea here is the higher you are, the better your building probably is, and the more you're going to have to focus on the operational aspects of it. Obviously, the lower you are, you may have to consider some investment to move your score upwards. So again, there are custom reports. You can generate them to your heart's content. Play with them. It's really hard to break Portfolio Manager. I play with a lot, and it's have a look at it, play with it. If you don't like the report, just delete it and try something different. My biggest concern, if you only have one building, the report is pretty skinny, right? If you've got a portfolio of buildings, then you get a nice report. So I'd like to see a different format myself, but that's where something like RETScreen comes in, because you can report on one building in RETScreen in a more fulsome fashion. So, and people say to me, Steve, do we use RETScreen or should we use Portfolio Manager? I say use both, because you can't generate an Energy Star score in RETScreen, which is a really handy thing. On the other hand, some of the reporting and the deeper analytics you can do in RETScreen, you can't do in Portfolio Manager. So they both have value and need to be used in concert. And that's why this interface that we're going to talk about is so valuable. So I'm just sort of use this as a map of what you can do. So in Portfolio Manager, you might be gathering invoices from your buildings, one form or another. Now, Nick, you actually do it electronically from the utilities in some cases, right? One way or the other, you're getting your invoice data into Portfolio Manager. Using the feature I'm going to show you today and that Nick already uses, he pulls that data into RETScreen, and he's used it to create a portfolio building. So you can see, there's a portfolio buildings here in Energy Star. Here we see a portfolio buildings in RETScreen. And then we can go on to do some fairly rich reporting within RETScreen upon that portfolio. Beyond that, you can actually look at individual buildings as well. So getting to that interface is pretty simple. You open up RETScreen, you've got a portfolio manager, you've got a portfolio of buildings. What you're going to do is you're going to navigate to the top of the screen under account settings, right? You'll click on account settings, and under account settings, you're going to see these 4 tabs: about yourself, accessing your account, your preferences, or software development, right? So you're going to say, I want to use the API, so yes, and you're going to click on register, and you'll get this form that you fill in. On that form, there's a few places where you can put the word RETScreen, but what you need to do is you need to tell in one of the fields, you need to say, I am going to be using this interface with RETScreen Expert, right? So they're not thinking you're going to develop software and play with it. You simply want to use it with RETScreen Expert. So fill the form in, send it off to them, and at some point after that, you'll get a notification that your account is now able to deal with the RETScreen communications. Now, I will mention right now, if you went there right now to try to do this, you'll see a band at the top of the screen because of the congressional budget appropriations in the U.S. They're a little bit behind, so you may not get a quick response out of them, but they will respond, right? So that is still available. So once you get that email back, then you'll be able to go into RETScreen. And again, if you don't have RETScreen now, only Portfolio Manager, that's cool, because by the end of this, I'll show you how you can get a free 1-year RETScreen license as well. So you'll go into RETScreen, you're going to go into create a new portfolio. You'll click on the button, Energy Star Direct Connect. Now, some of you may have been using this one here, which is actually a spreadsheet interface. Nick, you were using the spreadsheet interface originally, right? Until they brought it in place. And there is actually a transition between those two as well. If anybody has lots of buildings that they're using the spreadsheet interface with, and you want to smooth the transition to the Direct Connect, send me an email, because we're working on something right now which may actually allow you to do this automatically. One of Nick's colleagues has worked with us, and we're developing a tool where you can use the mapping files that you get from the spreadsheet interface to direct the automatic interface and save you a lot of manual setting up. Once it's set up, though, it all goes automatically. So we go in and we enter our username and password for Portfolio Manager. We tell it we want to create a new portfolio, or we could be updating existing one. But once we've selected our choice here, we hit OK, and literally it goes away and it just churns, right? And I've seen this do this for hundreds of buildings. This was a portfolio, I think, of 7 buildings, and it took me maybe 3 or 4 minutes to do that, right? It's really mostly about the communications in between, right? Once you actually get that portfolio up there, it'll ask you whether you want to update it. You can, in fact, I think I have it here. No, you can, in fact, click this button right here, Auto Update, yes, and you can tell it the frequency that you want it to check your Portfolio Manager portfolio. So let's say that you have somebody entering data in Portfolio Manager on a weekly basis. You could say check once a week or check once a day. And whenever you open RETScreen will go out and check to see if the data has changed. So once that portfolio is created to reflect what's in your Portfolio Manager portfolio, a lot of use of the word portfolio, multiple buildings, everything goes ticky-to-view. Now, if you have one building, there's actually another way to do this too, which is pretty much just about as simple. You can connect one building meter by meter to your Portfolio Manager data as well, if you chose to do that. So auto update's a neat little feature. Once you've built that portfolio, you can, in fact, jump in and do some reports. This is an interesting report. I like this report because it actually says, I've got a building, and in that building, I actually have a base case and a proposed case. And basically, you can establish for each building a target. So your energy intensity, so in this case is kilowatt hours per square foot, not gigajoules per square meter. So your base energy intensity is the solid dot. In this case, it's red. In this case, it's green. Why is it red versus green? Well, this is our benchmark. Let's say we want all our buildings to be operating below 12.7 kilowatt hours per square foot. Then what I want to see is all my buildings below this blue line here, kilowatt hours per square foot. These two buildings obviously are above it. And even with the targets that I set for these buildings, right, which would take them from the solid red dot to the clear one, I'm still not going to make it. So that means I have to go back and look at these buildings and think about what I'm going to do to work harder to get them back to my target value. So that's just one of the types of reports you can do in RETScreen, and you can't do that kind of report in Portfolio Manager, although it uses the data that's already there to make it easier. So again, using these things hand in hand is pretty good. You can look at reports, and again, you're going to take some of the reports, Nick, that you do probably look similar to this one, looking at all buildings, looking at the energy. In this case, we're looking at the total energy consumed by all the buildings that we have across a 1-year period, right? So you can see that weather curve, which obviously comes into play in many buildings. Now, I want to make sure we have enough time for Nick to do his thing. So, but I do want to take a couple of minutes to talk about the fact that you can now dig deeper than just that portfolio view. You can start to do some detailed analytics within RETScreen. Over here we have picture what we call a QSUM chart, and if anybody's familiar with it, this is called a measurement verification chart, where we have a baseline period and we see the deviation from the baseline, and the green means we're making savings. For a while it was red, use more, but then we eventually made savings. And that's also reflected in this QSUM chart, which is like a trend chart, cumulative sum of differences. We did talk about this one in the last webinar, and we can see the consumption dropping, and that's reflected by the green on this chart over here. Now, all of this can happen automatically. In addition to the data we get from Portfolio Manager, we can also pull data from a database. In this case, it's a cloud database. It's a NASA database. There are also 2 other databases available. If you like Environment Canada data, rather than, you don't want to use the satellite derived data from NASA, there is an automatic interface to the Portfolio Manager website. You can pull your Environment Canada data in directly. Also, if you're outside of Canada or in places where there isn't a weather station, there's a European equivalent to NASA called Copernicus, and that is now programmatically available within RETScreen. So you can connect to a multiplicity of weather sources as well. So if you've got multiple buildings, setting up some of this deeper analytics, you have to go into each one, do it fuel by fuel, or electricity, gas, water, all those things. Do it for 20 buildings. That's a fair bit of effort. There's actually a feature in RETScreen whereby you can, in fact, do all of those things en masse for whatever number of buildings you want within your portfolio. Check a few boxes, and the next thing you know, it's completed. There was, in this case, 9 buildings updated. We can drill down into the building, and we can immediately start to see our QSUM curves and our data and our weather. Everything's being done for us. So all the setup, which includes gathering weather data, creating heating and cooling degree days, right, and doing things like QSUM charts, control charts, regressions, statistical regressions, it's all going to get done automatically. Now, does that mean they're perfect when they're done? No. Right? It means you've got to go in and start to look at it. You can even select a period for the baseline. You can go in here and say, I want the first 12 months of my data to be my baseline, or some other period. So it's actually a pretty neat feature if you have a number of buildings. If you only have one facility, one hospital, one healthcare facility, you wouldn't necessarily use this feature. You could go in and do that directly, but for a number of buildings, it'll save you a lot of time. So again, the idea here is that we can develop these charts and then see them. So once that chart is built, and we've established a baseline and we're happy with the way it looks, all we have to do is go in and look at it the next time, and it'll automatically update. It'll ask us whether we want to update the weather data coming from whatever cloud database we use, the Portfolio Manager data, everything gets the charts are automatically updated. So it's pretty seamless when it comes down to it. Somebody sent me a building the other day, and it had actually sub-meters in their building, and I said, well, I wonder what your sub-meters would say. And he said, Steve, just click on that button and RETScreen will pull the latest data from our sub-meter. I didn't even realize it was there. I don't have to know their password, but he can let me see the data, which was pretty cool. So And that's basically what we call real-time analytics, where we have meters in our building which are collecting data. Could be the entire building, could be part of a building, could be in a database somewhere. But basically that data can be brought into RETScreen and then be used to create some much more detailed types of views. So it's really just a matter of when, rather than entering a building from bills, you can actually enter the building or the meter based upon some data out there through this, what they call application program interface. So all that to say, RETScreen, I think, and ESPM operating together with the cloud databases and maybe other tools become an entire tool suite. And, you know, I use all of these things, to tell you the truth. In my practice, I work with a lot of different organizations, not just healthcare. But I mean, everything's in one place. It's a hub. And I think, Nick, you do something to the same extent. Do you have any of the sub-meters in there yet? Any of the, like, do you have like sub-meters in any of your hospitals? Like, say,
Some are, yeah, but
yeah,
we don't do a great job of that yet.
you haven't got those hooked up yet, but you're working on it. That's fine. So Nick, I'm going to flip over to you and let you talk a little bit about what you do in New Brunswick. And Nick, you're responsible for multiple healthcare facilities from the energy point of view, correct?
That's correct. I will share once you unshare. Steven, you may need to stop sharing for me.
Oh, I need to stop sharing. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. We set this up differently. There we go.
Perfect.
I was reading the chat there, looking for questions to answer.
Perfect. Yeah, so as mentioned in the introduction, my name is Nick Thibodeau. I work with Service New Brunswick's energy management. And who are we? What do we do? So New Brunswick has its own government mandates for the environment, along with a climate change action plan that was drafted. So our goals are that all government-owned buildings, our goals are, for that are my role specific, have a 20 to 40% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2030 and be full net zero by 2050. So through that, kind of our group was formed. So that applies to really the different areas of government. And I'm not clicking here. There we go. So we essentially have 1 or 2 people assigned for each different sector. So me specifically, I work with the French hospital sector here in New Brunswick, Vitality, and DTI. So really what we do as individuals with our group, we monitor their energy usage. We analyze energy trends with some of the tools that Stephen mentioned, I'll get into. We then work with them to kind of figure out maybe catch little blips here and there. Is this kind of data entry error, or is this something that we need to dive into further? Whether it be with the operations staff at the hospitals themselves, or if it's something from the vendor energy provider side, we work with them. We help them prepare business cases for energy projects, kind of big and small. And then from there, we act in a kind of a PM energy resource role for those individual projects. So yeah, New Brunswick as a whole, this was kind of March 2024, but as a province within those buildings that we mentioned, we oversee about 1,000 of them. So schools, hospitals, DTI buildings, and tourism areas. That comprises 167,000 tons of GHG emissions. That was over a year, 755-ish for million equivalent kilowatts of energy consumption. And yeah, the total number of buildings. So for more from a day-to-day perspective, and I'll show kind of just a live shot. What we do, aside from the other things that were mentioned, let's go here, is kind of monthly when the energy bills come in, or we need to go update them depending on which we have directly connected to Portfolio Manager. We'll go in and review kind of the energy health of the buildings. So just as a quick snapshot, this is Moncton, New Brunswick's main French hospital. Their main source of heating is natural gas, and their main source of electricity or of cooling is electricity through the chillers. So just as a quick check-in, I'll go into here, kind of see this is our year-over-year energy intensity, just to see kind of the health for trending downwards. That's always good. And then I'll look into, okay, natural gas usage was up as a total over the last year, but that more so points us towards it being a colder winter, because when we look at the normalized data, it's in the green. So they're kind of, our energies don't need to be focused there. We can keep going to other stuff. When we go take a look at electricity, we're seeing, okay, we're moving upwards. Is there anything we can do? We'll speak with the operations staff and just kind of try to find the problem and see how we can apply it or apply a solution. And I'll get into kind of a quick view of that when we look at RETScreen. So that'd be the summary page. From there, we kind of dive into the energy. This again is just where we look for any anomalies. So from a kind of just natural gas standpoint, we're seeing kind of a normal trend, a bit less usage here, which always good. So it doesn't concern us as much. But when we look at a whole, we can see kind of an area that actually I believe we fixed a while ago, but I must not have saved it. So it makes for a good example of something that doesn't line up with the typical trend of more electricity, more cooling in the summers. Just wonky, for lack of a better word. So from there,
sorry to interrupt you for a little.
Yeah.
If you can maybe stop sharing your screen and reshare, because a few people say it's really, really small, and someone says they can't see. Just maybe reinitialize the. Sorry about interrupting. It was
no.
There may be a way, if you're watching and the screen is small, if you were to, if you can zoom in on this or
Thank
not.
you, Nick.
Yeah.
Is that better?
It's fine on my computer. It's fine.
Yeah, you might want to just like you do the control zoom up. Oh, looks like it's getting better. Now we can see it big.
It seems to be resolved. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Michelle.
awesome. We can blame government provided laptops there. Yeah, so as mentioned, like I said, we look for anomalies. For this, we'll kind of start simple and dive in. You can pull individual meter numbers, individual meter types. So for this one specifically, I had the electrical meter. Sometimes, as you can see, we have it direct connected, our electrical meters with NV Power. That's our main electricity provider here in New Brunswick. So for the most part, it's kind of straightforward. Sometimes you'll see the check mark for it's an estimated month where they couldn't access the site at that time to read the meter. So you could see some spikes based off what they assume you did, and then it kind of catches up the following month. This one specifically, it's just kind of highlighting errors on our side. So as Stephen mentioned, the kind of recording of who changed the data, you can see that I was doing something in there that I don't quite remember what. So that's kind of our first catch of, okay, this isn't a operational issue, this is a data entry. We then kind of summarize what we're looking for, and then we have contacts within this one specifically as NV Power to say, like, can you validate this for us? Was what we were doing correct? And we take it from there, reapply it, and then see the trends. So if we need to kind of look at a deeper level or create more elaborate graphs than this for whatever our audience may be, a lot of the operations guys know kind of what they're looking at in Portfolio Manager. So whether it's you're presenting to them or upper leadership, we'll take kind of a deeper dive and go into RETScreen. So this kind of captures everything for the same hospital. We've got natural gas, we've got like fuel oil as a backup, we've got propane as a starter for some of the boilers. And from there, these are kind of the typical graphs I'll use. So this you can just see if there's anything that jumps out, like kind of the COVID months are kind of can be seen here. And then 23, 24 was where we had the anomaly. So we can see, yeah, this does not trend with what we are typically used to seeing over said months. So when it's not something on our side, that was a misinput. We utilize this a lot in conversations with the operations staff to kind of dial in, okay, what was happening that month? Were you heating with a door open? Was something down that you're trying to cover for? Whatever it may be. We use this to facilitate discussions. So
I remember one situation where you had done a recommissioning and you were tracking the recommissioning with your QSUM chart, and it started to sort of tail off a little bit, and you went and dug down and you realized there was some settings in the BAS that had been adjusted. So it's
yeah, exactly. Which kind of is another example. So again, we use regressions in QSUM, as Stephen mentioned. Here are the two blips that once I go check my notes and validate, we'll be hoping they smooth out. But more on like a project-based standpoint, the electrical usage in the summer months has been trending upwards, as you guys can see here. So we wanted to see kind of what was the cause of that. We met with the operations staff and reviewed kind of their BMS system, and we're seeing that a lot of the chillers had been set manually. Their set points have just been kind of tweaked by hand year over year to the point where it wasn't optimized, and nor was their sequencing. So we went in the middle of June or middle of July to optimize their set points and their sequencing. So we wanted to see kind of how we were doing. We then therefore used the previous year as kind of a baseline, which fell into kind of a good R-squared value. So it was something we could use as trusted data. For the first month, we saw, so it kind of happened at the midway point between the two billing cycles, but we did see an increase during the first month, and we had an issue where kind of they had programmed the distribution of load too low, where a lot of the chillers were start stopping, instead of just having one dedicated chiller for that load. So we saw a spike in electrical usage. That was resolved, and for the following month, we are starting to trend back. So we use this to kind of follow along their progress. The hope would be it keeps trending downward, but if not, we kind of just keep chipping away at, okay, what could this be to get us back kind of in the green, so to speak. So yeah, I'll stop it there. The bulk of what we use Portfolio Manager and RETScreen for within our individual schools and hospitals groups.
That's great. Thank you, Nick. I think that was very, very specific. Yeah. So you can see that and none of that data, all that reams of data you had in RETScreen, you had to hit enter. It was all already being entered. A lot of your electricity data comes electronically from the yeah, am I sharing my screen properly there? Just to be sure. Yeah. So it comes electronically from the utilities, and so you can then focus on solving the problems or proving the benefits. So, and when I'm looking at your curve there, I think you're already in the green there. So that's good. We'll talk. I've got a thought about that one. I'll share with you afterwards. So, all right. So why use RETScreen? Interoperability. That's what we're talking about today, right? The interoperability of these tools. With Portfolio Manager for sure, right? But also all the other things you can do with this, like for example, this exostructure power monitoring here, which is that's actually a Schneider metering system. So many of your healthcare facilities probably will have some sub-metering. RETScreen can be connected to those. So you can not only look at sort of the monthly trends and the anomalies, but you could actually drill down, in fact, even connecting it in some cases maybe to automation in the building as well. So it becomes a really powerful tool to sort of become the hub of your energy performance diagnostics. And ultimately, the other feature of RETScreen I think that's pretty good is that it's persuasive. We didn't talk about all the charts and graphs and the financial analysis that you could do today, But in addition to having that ability to pull that data through from Portfolio Manager, go dive deeper on it, you can also present some pretty compelling cases for making improvements, all the way to capital improvements where you provide a rigorous financial analysis to decision makers. So I want to make sure that we have time. I know that Nick, you have to go to, and Michelle have to go to the French version, so I promised that I would finish here a little early. But the last thing I'll talk about is that if you are a Portfolio Manager user, then you are eligible for a 1-year free trial RETScreen Expert license. I just featured a LinkedIn post that Greg Lang, the director of creator over at RETScreen, has posted a little while ago. There's the email that you would click on there to request that particular license. If for those that don't qualify for this, RETScreen, I think it's $860 a year, roughly. I give or take a few dollars. So I just re-upped my subscription today, actually. So it's a 1-year subscription. If you buy the full subscription, one thing to keep in mind is it actually gives you 10 seats. You're allowed to actually use it on 10 different computers within your organization, or even with associated organizations. Michelle, you're smiling there.
Yeah, because I always look for loopholes. So if you're not a Portfolio Manager user, just create an account and become one, and you'll get you'll get a 1-year free license. Just become one. And I just wanted to ask both Stephen and Nick. Laurie in the chat asked for actually a good question about how to incentivize private healthcare owners to use such tools such as Portfolio Manager and RETScreen. So Nick, what would you say, what would be the driver for them, if I understand the question properly?
Yeah, we've kind of seen motivation come from both sides. The main one being financial. Kind of the biggest pitch we can give to them is what we call, instead of savings, because a lot of times those funds get redistributed and we don't have control over that, but cost avoidances. So at the end of the day, the funds they need to run their plant will hopefully be lower the more buy-in they have with this. So the more information they can give us, the more data we can get connected to, the more educated we can be in kind of presenting solutions to them. So most of our establishments have seen kind of their cost of operation lower, or at least keep up with inflation. And the other side of it is we've seen a lot of positivity around the Energy Star recognition. So getting your building certified, it comes with a lot of kudos and a plaque and a photo. So a lot of people have found that kind of being able to provide services for the hospital, the school, or whatever it may be, but also working towards the environment, just kind of an added bonus, whether it be professional development or just kind of the feel-good side of it.
Yeah, I would concur fully. You took both ideas right out of my head. So the Energy Star score, it was interesting. I was doing a workshop in healthcare a while back, actually with the coalition, and at that point there was a scorecard that people were looking at, and I said to people in the room who just presented these benchmarking results to their own hospital senior executive, a healthcare senior executive, I said, "What's the most common comment you got back?" And they said, "Well, I'm a silver. How do I get to be a gold? Or I'm a bronze." So there's that peer-to-peer competitive nature. So the Energy Star score definitely invokes that one. Yeah, I can't agree more on the cost side of things, right? And to me, I've done energy management for 45 years, and I'll tell you right now, if I didn't keep cost central, right, in addition to the sustainability pieces, yeah, it would not get the interest. So you got to put the cost in there. The other thing, I'm going to extend the Energy Star score thing. Nick, many of your hospitals, a number of them are ISO 50001 certified, right? That is that you certified to the ISO standard for management systems for energy. So ISO 50001, which is like ISO 9000, ISO 14000. That's another external recognition piece too that you get. And ISO 50001 is very much performance-based, right? So these tools that we're talking about here can form a foundation for a good ISO 50001 program as well. So again, I think that the recognition external to the organization is key, and also, as you said, Nick, real cost reductions or avoidances, right? And I agree. The word savings doesn't cut it. Cost avoidance is what it's all about. So, all right. So, Autumn, you've got 4 minutes left. I'm just looking at the questions here. So,
Yeah,
Lori,
lots in the chat.
yeah, Lori asked a question. I don't know if we have any, so I don't have the answer to that question, Lori, but I'll check around and maybe get back to you. My email is on the last slide. So if anybody has any further questions or would like to send that question to me, then I'm happy to try to dig out some answers to that one. Sorry.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have to end promptly here in a few minutes. So if anybody has any unanswered questions, please feel free to reach out to Stephen or myself, and we'll get those answered for you guys. It would also be wonderful if everyone who joined today could take a moment to fill out our exit survey. It's really important for our project KPIs. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It should only take a minute to complete. So I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much, Nick, and everyone who joined today. Take care, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah.